So what's impacting this year's budget? So we have approximately 176 initiatives that have been carried forward from 2022. So that's a culmination of multi-year projects. And we have 90 new initiatives being considered. So a considerable amount of initiatives on the docket. But like I said, a lot of those are multi-year, such as the Church Road Well project, which has been a multi-year project, which is hoping to be concluded here very shortly. We also have $5.3 million worth of new infrastructure projects for the regional water system alone. So this is not even for our North and South Pender, which also has a lot of new capital infrastructure proposed for those two water systems. So a lot of focus is on our water system. We also have several new resourcing requests being put forward, and that is really to generate the resources required to do many of the projects that we have online. We definitely use a combination of skilled consultants for engineering, civil engineering, structural engineering, geotechnical engineers, but we definitely are looking for more resources within our organization to launch those projects and provide the resources as well as the support staff to support them. We also have increased costs for ongoing maintenance. So that's really one of the focus and one of the drivers for a lot of our budget requests this year is really to maintain our existing service levels. So cost of doing business or cost of delivering service, a lot of our costs are going up. So things like replacing fittings for our water lines are just going up due to commodities, et cetera. So just highlighting, trying to synthesize some of the key projects, and these are ones that directly impact the services that the District of Sechelt participates in. We have in the top corner there, investment in cybersecurity, and we highlight this one because the SGRD was very well known that encountered a breach last fall, and we were very fortunate that we were up and running within several hours, and that was due to the structure we had in place. However, it was extremely disruptive to the organization, and it's an ongoing threat to all organizations. And so we are focusing our resourcing requests, and potentially one of the considerations is getting cyber insurance, which is quite difficult to attain, especially due to the increased activity due to cybercrime in the world through COVID. So that is one of the things that we're looking at. And that's a considerable risk from a business continuity perspective for the organization. We also have a capital renewal for our recreation facilities of over $5 million this year. And one of the key things that the board has done from a policy decision is commit to capital plan funding through our asset management planning. And that's really to stabilize the investment need for the various services of the organization. So some of these projects will be debt funded, but that's part of the funding envelope to stabilize the service. So not a significant increase, but definitely an increase as far as our taxation for this year. BC Transit too, we have the Transit Future Plan expansion that was approved last fall, and that has had a financial impact, and so there's support needs. We also have things within the transit service related to COVID, extended cleaning that needs to be now permanent in nature, and so that too is a budget consideration that was approved in round one. We also have several fleet maintenance and service expansion, and our fleet maintenance service is basically our internal garage in our organization, which services mostly our transit service. So instead of taking our buses to a shop, it just goes to our internal fleet shop. So one of the projects on our water system, our regional water system, is to ensure sustainable service or water delivery for the Eastbourne system on Keats. And so that is a $1.2 million investment for that particular project. And we also have several UV upgrades to the Chapman water system. So this has been an ongoing project, and this is the construction phase of that initiative. We also have ongoing maintenance and upgrades for our solid waste facilities. The taxation impact, which is one of the services that is a regional in nature, is our regional solid waste service. So we have over $1.3 million of initiatives, and one of those being expansion to the green waste service, as well as infrastructure upgrades to the Pender Harbour Transfer Station. So we also are trying to secure our ability to have hydro up at the Sechelt landfill, because many people may not know that we actually are on generators and solar up there. So we want to make sure that we actually have a secure hydro source up there, but that'll take some time and resources to complete that particular project. So what are the preliminary figures going into round one? And these are not final in nature. We're looking at over a $57 million budget for the regional district. And anyone who has sat in this table or is back to this table will see that this number has almost doubled since probably the last time you were here. So regional district is growing quite significantly. We also have a approximately $45 million capital budget. And again, this isn't completed based on our round two figures. These also include many of those projects, the 176 and 90 new initiatives. So that's a combination of projects that have been on the books for several years, seeing that the largest investment being in our water and wastewater services. So shifting over to assessments in the region, and just we look at this as far as how it impacts taxation, is due to growth. We've had just less than 1% growth in the region, and this includes all the electoral areas and our member municipalities. And that just means new construction or new assessed values in the region. And the increase due to market, so that's what something was worth based in 2020, well, early 2021 versus or end of 2021, and this is a snapshot as of July. So again, we're going to see revised values at the end of March. So over an 11% growth. But one of the things I wanted to highlight is the third bullet, with is what we do an assessment of too at the regional district is because a regional district, each service is paid through the service participants. So District of Sechelt will pay into solid waste, transit, regional water, those types of services. And assessments do impact the share of the pie that each participant pays into. So we do an analysis of, without factoring any additional taxation for the District of Sechelt, the impact from assessment would have resulted in a requisition 2.73 higher than the prior year. And that's just due to the cost share of each service. So our water and recreation parcel taxes and user rates were approved. Well, recreation is just a standalone, but again, we just wanted to see what the water rates would, because this is part of the requisition or passed on to the community, the District of Sechelt community. And so for 2022, the water rates were approximately 526, and they've increased to about 651. And so what we do when we analyze our water rates is we take that pre-budget information and we factor them into what the investment need is, for what basically the revenue needs are for the service. It is a year-by-year activity, and one of those initiatives on the docket and one of the newer initiatives is to continue with our water rate study. And so as we contemplate the last phase of the water meter installation, that will be part of the contemplation, is how we bill water going forward in the regional district. So our water parcel tax is what pays for capital renewal in the service, and these are quite distinct. User rates pay for operations, and parcel tax pay for capital. And so those have gone up approximately $86. So the average user will see an increase of approximately $211 over the prior year. And our recreation, again, is just projected to go down a little bit, and that's just really due to those growth projections earlier. You just want to press the next if you can. It's not cooperating. No, this one right here. Sorry. Oh, I think it jumped ahead. Sorry. Well, now it's working. There we are. So District of Sechelt proposed a taxation. So what we've shown here is really what essentially the rates are for the SCRD portion of the requisition to the District of Sechelt. And so this is not all-encompassing. I know in the past what we've done is we've incorporated the SCRD's tax into what a District of Sechelt taxpayer was. We didn't quite have the time to get that together. But in essence, this is really just the regional districts portion, which would show approximately just under $3 rate increase per 100,000 for an average homeowner based on after the round one decisions. So where did the taxes go for the District of Sechelt from the SCRD's portion? The majority is for recreation and culture, and this is mostly for our community recreation facilities, as well as our museum services, which includes the Sechelt Archives. So that is part of the funding here. The next one being our water service for parcel taxes, as well as environmental services, which is essentially regional solid waste. And our cemetery service, actually, too. So we wanted to clarify that. So what's next? Like we said, we are holding our community information sessions this week, as well as February 13th. Our round 2 of budget is currently planned for February 21st, with our budget bylaw adoption scheduled for March the 23rd. So that concludes my presentation, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tina. We were, I almost interrupted to see if you wanted questions as we went, but get through it all. So, Council, Mr. Toth and I have seen a bunch of this, so we'll give the rest of you first crack. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, thank you. Tina, thanks for coming as you always do. Post-COVID, I guess, here you are. One of the first slides you showed us was one of a number of projects that were ongoing or were about to occur. And I just wanted to ask, the number of the projects that were included, I'm assuming some of the projects are part of a user fee system, as you mentioned with water and solid waste. I imagine that there's some user fees as part of that. And I wanted to also ask, when you put the projects up there, is the reason that I'm wondering if it's a different slide than you've shown the other governments, or is this one that directly Sechelt funds through user fees and taxpayers?
So maybe, which slide are you in our agenda package? If you,
it was the one. It would be
number 5?
5, I guess, yeah.
Page
it has
5 of our agenda.
6 boxes on it, yeah.
4 boxes?
No, I don't think so. I thought it was 6. It's proposed projects and initiatives, investment in cybersecurity,
okay.
capital renewal, Eastbourne water supply.
Page 6.
Yeah.
Page 6 of the agenda.
6, yeah.
Okay. Please, do you know?
So this is really just a snapshot of one of probably the larger investments for services that the District of Sechelt participate in. We try to tailor the presentations to each area based on the services, because Town of Gibson's, for instance, doesn't participate in water, so we did not include their presentation to have any water initiatives on there. How these particular projects are funded is a series. It's available publicly as to how these particular projects are going to be funded. Some are multi-sources. So our regional water service is mostly funded through user rates, but we also have several debt-funded projects this year. We have long-term debt funding, we have short-term debt funding, and essentially that just comes back to the ratepayers from the parcel tax perspective. As far as other types of, we have several projects that are contingent on grant funding, and/or we are going ahead with committing to the projects and seeking grant funding. Those include some of the water projects. So, for instance, we did apply for a federal grant for the water meters. So even though that's been approved to be debt funded, it would be wonderful if we could get another source of funds, because that service definitely needs a lot more investment. So as far as user rates go for, say, community recreation facilities, the user rates mostly pay for the operations of the service. And we have not seen the recoveries for user rates for recreation services than we've seen pre-COVID. So we're still trying to make up some ground there. So we don't really rely on that from a funding source for especially capital renewal, except there's a small contingent amount in the user rates that do contribute to capital renewal, and I think it's about 5% of the user rates that pay for that. So I don't know if that answers the question. But I definitely can point you to, if you want to see, it's literally line by line in our big spreadsheets.
Trust me, it's big. Councillor Shepherd, thanks.
Sorry, just to pop back to something you were mentioning, your response to Councillor Inkster, the water meter program. You were saying that it's not fully funded at this point. Thank you.
The water meter project, the installation of the water meters are funded in the sense that I think 2 years ago, we got elector approval, so public approval to fund up to $7.5 million of long-term debt funding. What I was speaking of was the water rate, because right now we have a flat rate system of how we bill water. And so there's a project out there right now of how we're going to go forward with how we bill for users for water. Is it going to be a volumetric model? And that's for consideration. And that's not fully fleshed out. We're just in the first phase. And one of the proposals for this year's budget is to commit some funding to complete maybe a second phase of it. Whether or not we need that funding, we don't know, because we have some internal resources that could help with that. But that's coming forward and would likely come forward to council as well, as far as just an understanding of where we're going with that.
Okay. Councillor Bell, please.
Thank you. Hi, Tina. Thank you for being here. Around transportation services, does this include any new bus services? I certainly know that the community is telling us that there is not enough bus service north of Sechelt, so I wonder if that is in the plan.
So BC Transit and the SCRD has undergone a transit expansion review last year, and that was presented, and the prior board actually made it, or was it the prior board or this year? I can't remember. I think it was September. There was a commitment to BC Transit to expand Route 90. And so that is a commitment, but there are several phases within the transit expansion, which is to expand certain routes of the service. I don't have it handy here, but we can most certainly resource or pass that resource on to the council or yourself as well. And within that, it's a phased approach, and the process is such that September of last year, they committed to the Route 90 being expanded. And so the next service decision for expansion would come in front of the board for consideration again in September, because the process is BC Transit needs to plan for infrastructure, their side of the funding essentially, and they do that decision making in September.
Great, thanks. I'll jump in. Back on slide 5, or at least 5 of our agenda package, Council, the reference to 176 initiatives have been carried forward, and we got 90 on the books proposed for this year. This actually comes from citizens' question of me, so I get to ask it of you. Are we overreaching, being overly ambitious to try to deliver 260 or so projects? Like, are all these going to get done this year?
I don't know if I can answer that. I think that's a culmination of board decisions and prioritization of what the focus is. And I think No,
and that's fair. That's why I give credit to my friend who asked me. The follow-on to that is, if we don't adopt the new ones in particular, would that help reduce the proposed tax increase?
If we don't approve the new ones. So there are some of the new initiatives that are legislatively mandated. And so those are some of the non-discretionary. So, for instance, the province has now required local governments to have a business continuity plan. And so, although that is a very small dollar amount, it's only $18,000, of which we hope to use some of our MIA grant funding, our municipal insurance grant funding to pay for, that we have to do some of them. And not all of them are tax funded, but most certainly if there are, if we don't have to do them or don't approve them, then yes, obviously the natural impact of those tax funded ones, we wouldn't have to requisition them amongst the participants. We'd have to know which are the participants. So
yes, in terms of whether it would help my friend who happens to live in Sechelt, it might not impact him. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So if it was a parks project and we didn't approve that one, that wouldn't impact District of Sechelt because that's only the electoral areas or rural areas that pay for that.
Right. Thanks. Council? Councillor Shepherd, thank you.
Just something you mentioned in the preamble. You mentioned that is it the region's philosophy to the budget sort of reflects just maintaining existing business levels. Can you talk more about that?
The regional district has worked really hard over the years to develop policies and to develop what we aspire to have as sustainable service level. And so what that means is trying not to have spikes and valleys in tax requests for many of our services, because we have several different pots. In essence, we have to be mindful of that. So we're not just one local government with one mill rate. So we try to do that for each service. So what it means is we're trying to develop sustainable service levels, and what that means is the funding. And what that also means is maintaining our assets to the service that they need, but also to be able to deliver the service that we currently do. So, for instance, we're going to pick on transit. We have a certain service level that we come into terms with BC Transit through our annual operating agreement, and we commit to delivering a certain amount of hours of transit service around the region. And so in order to deliver that service, we then have to have facilities, infrastructure, staffing, and the related overhead. And so I think that's what we're saying is that many of our services have an implied service level, like transit does. It's prescribed. But not all our services do have a prescribed service level. So that's, I think, what we're working on, because again, it ties to the reason why and what people are paying for.
Okay, Councillor Bell, please.
Thank you.
To me.
So it's always interesting when you look at the pie and seeing the percentages. Certainly, water and wastewater, I can see is one of the biggest percentages, but recreation and cultural services, boy, that one is quite surprising. And I know that in some of the reading, I think there's some pretty significant repairs that have to be done. Is that the case? And is it included, obviously, in this budget at some point?
Yes. So we have had a capital renewal plan for our 4 community recreation facilities, developed since 2016. And so for new folks who have been around, when we constructed the facilities for about 10 years, there was no capital investment put into the facilities. They were ad hoc one-offs. And so essentially the taxation was like a yo-yo for those particular, that service. And so what we tried to design was a model where we could consistently invest a certain amount, and we may have to draw large amounts each year. And there's different funding models or funding sources. So this year we're actually, we have a combination of reserve funding, taxation funding, and debt funding for many of those capital renewal investments. We have a replacement of the Gibsons and Area Community Center roof. Many people, and one for the Sechelt Aquatic Facility. Many people think those are our new facilities, and yes, however, they're 16, 17 years old. And by the time we actually get construction to happen for those facilities, it's likely that those will be completed in 2024. And so that's why we put them in the budget this year, but by the time the funding and all that kind of stuff happens, will be the subsequent year. We also have dozens of other projects that happen. The board doesn't necessarily make decisions on every one because there's dozens. There's anything from a hot water tank to a condenser to those types of things. They approve the plan, the capital renewal plan, and the policy decision of the funding level based on a service level. And so right now, the plan just really funds critical infrastructure. It doesn't even fund things, but this year's plan addressed things like replacing our fitness equipment, because I think it would be quite challenging to deliver a gym at the Seashell Aquatic Facility if you didn't really have a funding envelope for capital replacement of your gym equipment. So that's the evolution of this particular plan. It's brought forward for consideration quite regularly, at least on an annual basis. It's reviewed.
Great.
Great.
Thanks. That's really helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Toth. No, thank you for turning the microphone off. Okay. I wonder if we might because I think this might help if we could share the screen again in slide 11. A question from me. That would be the District of Sechelt proposed SCRD taxation. Ms. Furrow. This is a new one. No, sorry, it'll be, yes, thank you. Yeah, so can you take us through that again? I freely admit I didn't follow what you were presenting, so, oops.
Yeah, so this particular assessment is taking all of the decisions that have been made in round 2 and previous to round 2, and is estimating what the tax rate would be per 100,000 of residential taxation.
The mill rate?
Not the mill rate, because
okay.
we, each service of the regional district, so solid waste has its own tax rate, community recreation has its own tax rate. And so what we do is we add all of those up, and that would be essentially the rate per 100,000 of users requisitioning to the District of Sechelt. So what that equates to from a dollar perspective and how it actually translates into your mill rate would it's
don't go there. I shouldn't have raised.
That's separate. We don't factor that in. This is only the SCRD's envelope of what we would requisition to the District of Sechelt.
Because that looks, when I look at the 146 to the 149, that's pretty small.
Per 100,000, yes, for the SCRD's
yeah.
portion. That's right, yeah.
But that's like a 2% increase. That, am I...
Per 100,000.
Understood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so when we look at the tax rate and we look at the requisition year over year, that is much more substantial. But when we look at it based on, we combine it with the assessed values as to what it means to the average homeowner from per 100,000, like how much am I going to have to pay for that? Or how much am I going to have to pay of that piece of the requisition? It's essentially about a little under $3 per 100,000 of assessment. But what we know is some people's assessment... $3 more than last year. It's $3 more than last year, correct. Right. And what we also know is people's assessments have done different things. Some people's assessment went up more relative to their neighbors, and some pay less. So that factors into it. And so how it actually translates is from the municipal side of the house, we know that there's a lot more factors to this as far as what it translates into your ratepayers.
Right. Now, Councillor Inkster, 1 second. So I want to be clear, this doesn't symbolize or signal that the increase in the SCRD rates paid by the Sechelt taxpayers will be another 2 or 3%. At this stage, the preliminary numbers we're looking at are much higher than that.
I don't know how it's going to, yeah,
Based on what
Yeah.
we're looking at now, though, it could be much higher.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, all we do know is the requisition.
Right.
The estimated requisition.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Inkster,
Sounds like you have some work to do.
you busy tomorrow?
Yeah. And I am now. Tina, the chart that you've listed here that Mayor Henderson referred to has the lowest value. I'm not even sure if we have houses in Sechelt that meet that value anymore, sadly. So we might, but what I would encourage for future, if possible, is to maybe add a $1.5 and $2 million home up there to give an indication of what people are paying. It's sadly where our house prices have gone for those that are looking for an affordable home, but it may be more representative of what's happening along our waterfronts and even the newer homes that are built up higher with a view. So if you can add that, if it's possible, thank you. Maybe it just has to be smaller houses with the amounts there on that page. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing and hearing no others, thank you. I know it's been a whirlwind of a little more than 24 hours. Yeah, thanks for your time, Ms. Burrow, and thank you to all the SCRD people for being here, including, I notice online, Director McMahon, so thanks for joining us. Okay, thanks. All right, Council. Great. We can move on then. There's no new business. So we'll go to item 5.1. We've got our various staff reports from the different divisions. And we get to start with administration. And anything perhaps, Ms. Roberts, that you'd like to highlight for us, or? Hearing nothing, none?
Nothing at this time, just for your review and here for any questions.
Great. Excellent answer. Council? One, I think I know the answer, but on page 16 of our agenda package, and this is a technical question, what does recollect? I guess it's the users remember. Do they recollect the? Yeah.
Right. It's our app for garbage collection.
It's just that I guess as I asked the question, I think I answered it.
Yeah.
Do people recollect that they use the app?
Well, it's the way we push out information on our garbage service to users. So people at home or whatever have to download that app, and then if there's a service interruption or a delayed in service, we push out information that way, and that's the app that we do that on.
I understand, but
Okay.
there's a term recollect in here that I think, as I say, we can move on. I think we can. Right. I defer to those with a better idea. Okay, it's not something we can need to spend a lot of time on. Council, so do we have about 2,700 users, Mr. Douglas? Is that or app subscribers? I guess that's people who
Get more subscribers, we have more users than.
Yeah. Great. Councillor Shepherd, please.
My only comment on the sort of communications part of it is that through the SCAF meetings, I will implore the manager of communications to join me meeting at the next SCAF meeting to try and improve the two-way communication with the associations and council. And I think it'll be really helpful to have the manager along. There are some parts of a communication effort, for instance, with the budget, which just seemed not to be working. And I don't know if it's the nature of budgets being, fairly dry material, but having seen the exercise where staff are trying to communicate the ongoing budget discussion, it's so poorly attended. It just seems, personal opinion, almost a waste of staff's time. And I just wonder if more thought can go into how do we project important things like that, or try and grab the public's attention. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. It's complicated, and well, even when you look at 177 letters and emails in the fourth quarter, but I think 39 required detailed responses. Maybe the number 40 wish they got a more detailed response, but it's so hard to know. Yes, sir. Councillor Inkster.
I'm assuming Councillor Shepherd's referring to the amount of people communicating with the district. Sometimes those that do it often may be the lucky ones, but sometimes we have to incentivize that. Communications, one of every 5,000 gets a free monthly gym membership or something like that. That's sometimes what you need to do, and it's sort of what other municipalities have done to encourage people to make those leaps into online, into that particular form of communication with their local government, rather than just complaining in the other online forum of Facebook. So it's sometimes what you need to do if you wonder why there's no communication.
Incentives. Very good. Thanks. Okay. Terrific. Okay. Yep. Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just going to comment on, this looks like quite a bit of work to put together these lists of things that are being done. And I was just wondering if the different departments have like annual work plans that they do and projects, because it might be interesting to see a different format where work plans and projects were listed, and then what is being done on those projects, so that we then maybe tie that to budget items and can show clearly, what's being done, why it's being done, who's doing it, and what it's costing, or what's being spent, essentially, to some extent. That's how I'm used to looking at things, more as a project management, is just a suggestion. Maybe it's more appropriate for some departments than others, but I think it might be helpful to see things that way. It might be less work, too. For instance, there's one item, well, I don't know if we're going to go through all the departments, but I have questions about some of them because I'm just getting a little snippet. And I don't see the context or anything for some of them. So,
okay.
I think it's just a general comment.
So I think it's fair to say there are work plans for the departments, but I take your point about comparing against them as we go through the year.
Yeah, it's just in terms of, I'm not saying they're not accountable, but it shows accountability and it shows transparency. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
My only kind of concern with that is that we are to be focused, I think, on policy. And I love the detail in here. It's helpful, but I just worry about getting too far into the weeds, because I'm certainly not a professional on communications or other of the departments here. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we can, so those are comments. I'm sure Mr. Yates and his team will think about it. There is certainly some, I'm quite in agreement. If we can reduce the amount of time it takes to put these reports together every 3 months, I'm sure everybody would be delighted on all sides of the room. Councillor Toff, were you?
I'll put my hand up and I want to talk.
Okay. All right, I guess, why don't we, I could have done this, but we don't even receive anymore, do we? We take it as given, so. All right, council, seeing nothing more on administration, how about, we talk about finance and IT? As in my bookmarks, but the Financial Services Department report. No.
Yes, I wanted to comment on one project that's been a lot of work and from a lot of staff, not just IT staff, and that's the website redesign project. I think we need to get it out there more and more that we do have a new website. It is a lot better, and you know, we need to get it out there so people are using it more. But that's really the only one I wanted to comment on overall.
Beat me to it. I'm going to ignore Councillor Toth. He's waving his fist in front of my face. Please, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I just wanted to tag on to the comment from Director Douglas in that if you were subscribed to news alerts from the old website, you've got to go back and resubscribe because with the change in platform, those subscriptions weren't kept. So just something for council to be aware of. We should all be subscribed to the alerts coming out of the website.
Thank you. Anything? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I'm just trying to pick up a little piece of what, you know, Councillor Shepherd and Councillor McLaughlin said, and then listening to what Director Douglas said. I mean, having all of this information is tremendous. I know it's a lot of work, I'm sure, for each of one of you to put this together, and there's no doubt the amount of work that is done by the staff. I'm just wondering, it's helpful if there's some way that we can have highlighted that might, you know, that we can say, okay, we need to be involved in a decision, or this need to bring to our attention, that kind of thing. The website is an example of that. So I just want to make sure you're the best use of your time so that we can assist, you know, in terms of the best use of our time to support you. So just a thought, what that might look like, I don't know, but it might just be pieces of this and what Councillor McLaughlin and Shepherd has said. We don't want to get too much, but I think something would be very helpful as to how we can support you.
So maybe I'll respond. I think this is what's been considered the best by the previous council, and if we think there's a better way or a refinement that we'd like, it's up to, you know, certainly I'm sure staff will provide it.
To see if there is. I'd like to make that request.
But it would be up to us to tell them what we want that is different than this. So Councillor McLaughlin has given one thing, and perhaps in the weeks to come, we can come up with some sense of what might work better for us if indeed.
Some ideas.
There is some, yes.
Okay. Good.
Anything else, Mr. Douglas, that you want to highlight? How about that we read 151,000 emails in the last quarter?
Not too bad.
I think I read most of them. Feels like that anyways.
No, I mean, this quarter becomes, finance is one of their busiest quarters. You know, usually it's the first quarter of the year that's probably the most busiest, first two quarters, but we're winding up budget at this time in this quarter, and we're starting to get ready for year end. So we're ramping up for the first and second quarter of the next year.
While you're finishing this year, last year in this quarter. Yes, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, you referenced something that is interesting to me in its comments, is that you referenced emails. So I'm assuming as we go forward, and I'm wondering, although it may mean more effort, I'm not sure because of the platform evolutions. Are there other means by which people are communicating with us as well then? It used to be big. I remember when emails came out, and I've been here that long. I came a little bit after that happened.
Right. Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of emails that were coming in, and I'm wondering if the mode by which people are communicating with are changing. We see some of the commentary on Facebook, but that's common. But there's other ways. There's Twitter and things like that. So I'm wondering if, in fact, that's happening because what we know from any kind of analysis of messaging is if we are not attuned and or have a platform to receive that information, in a lot of cases, we're not hearing from probably now those under 40 in a lot of cases.
So maybe you're asking that we hear from our communications manager soon about what they are monitoring or how they monitor the different platforms.
Yeah. Just as we evolve. So many of the other things we are doing, including the website, is an evolution. So how are we sending and receiving messages? Thanks.
Okay. No, I think that's good because I did ask, and I won't put anybody on the spot today, but I asked a question sort of related to that and got the answer, no, we don't do that. Okay. You know, it was interesting, but we don't around this table necessarily know that. So. Okay. Anything else, Council, from the financial services? If not, planning and development. Same question, Mr. Allen. Anything you want to highlight in 12 seconds or less?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. This being a fourth quarter report, so it does reflect back on some achievements that were made, including adoption of the zoning bylaw early in fourth quarter, commencing with implementation of short-term rental regulations also in fourth quarter, making headway and getting very close to issuing building permit for TELUS Living Rental on Inlet Avenue, and a lot of work was done on that project in fourth quarter as well. And we culminated the year with a lot of achievements in regional cooperation and success regarding housing, climate action, building relationship with both the province and the Sechelt Nation. So making positive steps forward in regional collaboration as well. Thank you.
Great. Council? Because what you just said last, I think, are the 2 points actually that I highlighted. So what does is there a timeline for the cooperation between the 3 or 4 governments in terms of housing policy and so on?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Your Worship. I'll go through a few of the initiatives. We have the housing coordinator and Mr. Ian Hall, the other Ian Hall, SCRD Ian Hall, attending Community of the Whole in later this month, February 22nd, to talk about the housing strategy, and myself and Marina Stevovic have been involved in that. They've also, the regional district has wrapped up the regional district scoping background exercise. So not to be confused with the regional growth strategy, but the scoping behind it. And they've had a consultant company work with them, and they are seeking our comment and endorsement of that. So that remains ongoing. They are also engaging on climate action initiatives, and Marina has been involved with those as well. And so there's lots of overlap, and I would suggest there are timelines individually, but as a whole, it's an unending process working with our local partners, including Sechelt Nation. We're doing the best we can to forge better working relationship and communication.
Okay, so it's an ongoing process with no particular major goals or projects to be completed. It's more of a process.
It is a process, yes. We are looking at an overall strategy for housing and some consistency, respecting support for different types of housing options and so forth, and we'll bring that. That is a project that can come to conclusion, but it leads us moving forward with policy initiatives.
Great, thanks. Wow, getting off easy. Councillor McLaughlin, thank you.
Not that easy. Yeah, I was just looking at page 29. I just had some questions. For instance, there's a bullet there under department goals, creation of a new downtown-specific residential and commercial zones within zoning bylaw 580. The bylaw is adopted, so I'm just wondering what that means and how you define the downtown. There's another one, a couple more down, that include commence background review of OCP review, which will include focus on downtown. So I'm just wondering how you define downtown and where that initiative came from in terms of policy and how it's going. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, just briefly, because I think it's a big question that warrants, I'm sure, a more fulsome answer. Is there anything you can give us briefly for today?
Sure, thank you.
Because it's more of a forward-looking question than clarification of what's in the report, I would suggest. Please.
Okay, you bet. Thank you. We had previously considered whether or not we would focus on a downtown plan or an OCP review, and even if we do a full OCP review, I would suggest that the downtown area being the key and the priority area, looking at our densities, our land uses, and how we can continue to support and review these mixed uses that we see in our downtown area. The existing official community plan does have a map for downtown, but it can be subjective, of course. There was some conversation, discussion, whether or not ebb tide, surf circle, residential areas, for example, are downtown, or if downtown is restricted to simply the commercial area. So there is some subjectivity to that specific boundary, noting that downtown has a mixture of the village residential as well as the commercial. Thank you.
Councillor Inkster, please.
If in fact, because the OCP review has indicated the length and cost that may entail, and the downtown sensibly would be one that would be discussed and focused upon, I would encourage perhaps a discussion with planning as to what downtown entails, i.e., does it entail the downtown, and of course it's the residential area as well as the commercial because of the residential, the transition area that was created a number of years ago, so we need to include the residential areas, but the Sechelt slopes. And we should maybe have a discussion about whether we'll include these slopes that go up towards the high school as a consideration, because that's a density opportunity potentially.
Right.
So it would be a good discussion as to whether that should be included in West Sechelt, which, as far as I know, it is, and I could be corrected. Andrew, you can either nod, or through you to Andrew, you can nod or not, but I think it's included in West Sechelt. But right, West Sechelt, the original community of West Sechelt, was basically based around Norris Bay and Mason. So what's the downtown?
So I think what I'm hearing, and sure staff is hearing, that this is a topic we'd like to talk about. Is that okay? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No. It's and where does downtown go or end on? I don't know, Wharf. You know, there's all these sorts of considerations.
Yeah. I mean, we access the areas that I'm referring to, the slopes. We don't go up Norwest Bay to access those areas. We go up Cowrie. Right?
Yep.
Lots of reasons why we need to discuss it. Thanks.
Great. All right. Hearing nothing more on that, we'll move to Mr. Kern Dillon's quarterly report, which I'm sure will be ably presented by Acting Director of Engineering and Operations, Megan Lee. Ms. Lee, anything you want to highlight?
I didn't have anything prepared to present, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Very good. Council, have we installed the Snicket Park washroom?
Thank you for the question. The Snicket Park washroom is not installed yet. I believe we're still awaiting permit approval for that work.
I just jumped when I saw it at the bottom of page 41. It read as installed already. So, cool. Okay, thanks. Council? Please, Councillor Inkster.
Thanks for that. I was just trying to look at my notes and things like that. What about, where's the playground at?
Playground. Which playground?
Hackett Park Playground.
Oh. It's, just down the street, 2 blocks.
Okay, our next council picture, I like your thinking.
Asked and answered.
Yeah.
What's your question about the
Where's it at? It's, is it complete? It looks,
You talking the Hackett Park stage?
no, the playground.
Right.
Hackett Park stage is complete,
Right.
I'm assuming, but the playground? It's been there for a number of years, that existing playground, and it was somewhat workable, but everything needs
Yep.
modernization, so, yeah.
No, I see somebody there,
Yep,
please.
thank you for the question. Yes, it's partially installed, the project's partially complete, and expected to be finally completed and opened, I believe, end of March.
Great, thank you. Councillor Toth, thanks.
Thank you. Looking on page 46, within the GIS update section, the very last bullet point there talks about parks layers created to track invasive species. And I'm wondering if that's just something that we're using in-house for our own parks properties, or is that something that we're able to track where we might be finding invasives on private property if it's being reported or what have you?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. I believe at this time it's for internal use to track where we're seeing invasive species, where we can do invasive species control. I don't know that there's an intention to expand it to private property, but I can follow up. Thank you.
Yeah, great. I mean, it would be good in a sense, but I'm not sure how we'd discover it on private property, but. Council, I'm gonna give you one more quick chance. Okay. Hearing and seeing nothing else, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is adjournment of this meeting. Moved.